Hey everyone. Before the world around you fully wakes up, before the traffic hums and the coffee hits, I want you to imagine something unusual. A modern city skyline. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles. Gleaming towers of steel and glass cutting through the clouds. Now imagine that skyline slowly dissolving, fading into dust, pulled apart by time. The buildings crumble. Streets disappear, lights go out. But beneath all that ruin, something remains. A bridge, a road, an arch, a whisper of an older civilization. And after the dust clears, what stands there, stubborn, unbroken, is Roman. For 2,000 years, engineers, archaeologists, and architects have asked one question. How did the Romans build structures that outlast almost every modern attempt? Today, we travel back, not just through history, but through the very bones of the ancient world, to rediscover the wonders of Roman engineering that still defy time. This isn't a story about emperors and gladiators. This is the story of stone, water, fire, ambition, and the people who carved a superpower out of the dirt. This is Echoes of Glory, Roman engineering marvels that defy time. The secret ingredient nobody saw coming. Long before Rome ruled continents, before legions marched across Europe like a rolling storm, the Romans were problem solvers. And every empire-building story starts the same way, with a single question. How do we make something last? The answer came from the ground. It didn't look like much, just a pile of grayish powder in clay jars. But mixed with water, stone, and volcanic ash, this powder became something miraculous. Roman concrete, a substance so durable that modern scientists still can't fully replicate it. Modern concrete cracks, crumbles, and dies within 150 years. Roman concrete? It stands defiant after 2,000 years of rain, sun, earthquakes, and war. When the Pantheon's dome was completed in 126 AD, engineers assumed, quite logically, that gravity would eventually win. After all, it was the largest unsupported concrete dome on Earth. But gravity never did win. The Pantheon is still there today, shrugging off the centuries like dust on its shoulders. How did they do it? Volcanic ash from Mount Vesuvius, lime, seawater, and a recipe so perfectly balanced the material became self-healing. Yes, Roman concrete literally fixes its own cracks when water seeps in. Thermal expansion, shrinkage, corrosion, the Romans cracked those problems before we invented algebra. But concrete alone didn't build an empire. It only set the foundation for what came next. Roads that outlive empires. Let's step on to one of Rome's greatest achievements, their roads. Imagine walking along the Via Appia, one of the oldest highways in the world. Smooth basalt stones still align perfectly, almost like they were placed yesterday. But this path is 2,300 years old, and it's not alone. The Romans built 250,000 miles of roads, stretching across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa, enough to circle Earth 10 times. But what made their roads legendary wasn't just scale, it was design. Roman engineers didn't just pave dirt, they sculpted landscapes. To build a stable road, they dug deep trenches, laid compacted sand, added gravel, topped it with flat stone slabs, designed drainage systems, included signage, mile markers, and rest stations, maintained everything constantly through specialized crews. This wasn't a road, it was infrastructure, a network that connected over 70 million people. Merchants used it, armies dominated through it, messages traveled at speeds unheard of for the ancient world. Even today, modern European highways follow the exact routes The Romans mapped with ropes, wooden stakes, and sheer determination. But the roads were only the beginning. Water, the lifeblood of civilization. When you turn on a faucet today, you probably don't think about ancient Italy, but you should, because 2,000 years ago, the Romans built something extraordinary: aqueducts. Not 1, not 10, but 11 full-scale aqueduct systems feeding the ancient city of Rome alone. Some stretched 50 miles, some crossed valleys using towering stone bridges, some tunneled through mountains with laser-like precision. Roman engineers calculated elevation drops to the millimeter. If a slope was too steep, water would spill and erode. If it was too shallow, water wouldn't flow. So they found the perfect angle, a gentle decline of 1 to 3 inches every 100 feet. This demanded near-perfect surveying skills centuries before telescopes were invented. The result? Rome received 200 million gallons of fresh water every day, water that filled fountains, supplied households, fed bathhouses big enough to fit 3,000 people, and powered mills that ground grain for the entire city. The aqueducts didn't just supply water, they symbolized the idea Rome sold to the world. A civilization should be more comfortable, more advanced, more livable than nature intended. And for a long time, it was. The shape that made Rome unstoppable. Let's look at something deceptively simple: the Roman arch. To the average passerby, it's just a pretty curve. To an engineer, it's genius. Before the Romans, most structures depended on straight beams. Beams bend, they crack, they buckle, but arches don't. By redirecting weight through the curve into supporting pillars, the Romans discovered the secret to building massive bridges, constructing towering aqueducts, supporting multi-story buildings, designing stable gateways, creating the Colosseum. The arch allowed Rome to build up, not just out. If concrete was the bones of Roman engineering, the arch was its heartbeat. Stand under the Pont de Garde, an aqueduct bridge in France, and you'll feel it immediately. The arches, huge, elegant, mathematically flawless, hold the structure as easily as if it were made of paper. No steel reinforcements, no modern machinery, just ambition and geometry. The Romans understood that the world wasn't flat, it curved, and their architecture followed suit. The city as a machine. Rome wasn't an accident, it was engineered. Think of the ancient city not as a collection of buildings, but as a living machine built from the ground up with purpose. Streets arranged in grids, drainage systems beneath them, underground sewers flushing waste away, public bathhouses serving thousands daily, basins and pools regulating water flow, heating systems circulating warm air through floors, apartment complexes rising several stories high. The Romans created urban planning centuries before modern zoning laws existed. They invented apartment housing, district divisions, firefighting brigades, public sanitation, street lighting using oil lamps, city-wide plumbing. This wasn't typical of ancient civilizations, it was revolutionary. Rome didn't just build a city, it built a blueprint for modern life. The great builders behind the scenes. At the core of this story, behind every stone and beam, stood the engineers, surveyors, architects, and everyday laborers who actually built Rome. History rarely remembers their names, but they were geniuses of practicality. A surveyor in the Roman Empire could map a straight road across hilly terrain using only a groma, a kourobates, a measuring rope, and the sun. Hardly high-tech, but astonishingly effective. Engineers didn't just design structures, they supervised construction, maintained infrastructure, inspected repairs, and trained apprentices. If you're still awake, congratulations. If you're already drifting, that's honestly the correct response to Roman infrastructure. Don't worry, I'll keep the pace slow, like a tired legionary marching home after a long day of doing geometry in the sun. So, let's gently pick up where we left off. We've talked about Roman concrete, arches, roads, aqueducts, basically the ancient equivalent of a civilization bragging about its toolbox. But Rome didn't stop at building long-lasting things. No. Rome also built too many things, mostly because emperors felt insecure and wanted large monuments to compensate for, let's say, leadership shortcomings. So, tonight, let's slowly drift into the world of Roman engineering projects that were a little excessive, a little impressive, and occasionally a little pointless, like the empire itself. Let's glide quietly into Roman bridges, stone giants with trust issues. Bridges are one of those structures that modern cities like to brag about. Look at our steel suspension. Look at our fancy cables. Look at our LED lighting. Romans had none of that. Just stone, mortar, and a complete disregard for nature's boundaries. Roman bridges were built so well that many still exist today, which is frankly rude to modern infrastructure. Some bridges have outlived multiple political systems, language shifts, empires, and at least 12 types of government corruption. Take the Pons Fabricius, the oldest bridge in Rome still in use. It's over 2,000 years old, built in 62 BC. It has survived floods, earthquakes, tourists taking selfies, and the entire Middle Ages trying its best to collapse everything. And the Romans built these bridges with one general philosophy. If a river is in the way, just walk over it. Wooden bridges? Only when necessary. Stone bridges? That was more their vibe. They carved arches into the landscape like it was Rome's personal signature. Honestly, if Rome had a business card, it would just be an arch with a smug expression. Amphitheaters, because Rome needed big round buildings for questionable reasons. Now, let's float over to entertainment. Or, well, ancient entertainment, which was mostly just watching people or animals doing things we're not allowed to describe in a sleepy script. You already know the big one, the Colosseum. But the Colosseum isn't just a landmark or a symbol of imperial extravagance. It's an engineering marvel, a massive elliptical ring of arches, vaults, staircases, secret corridors, elevators, trapdoors, and enough seating to fit an entire mediocre music festival. But what makes it fascinating and somewhat soothing to think about is how calmly the Romans engineered it. No drama, no frantic scribbling of plans, just engineers strolling around with measuring rods and saying, well, let's just make the largest amphitheater the world has ever seen. Should be fine. And the materials? A calm mix of travertine limestone, brick, concrete, marble, and whatever structural magic they apparently had in unlimited supply. The Colosseum could fill and empty its entire audience in minutes thanks to its cleverly designed corridors. Modern stadiums still copy that layout, which is impressive considering the Romans didn't even have turnstiles or pretzels. But the real charm is that the building still stands today, despite being used for centuries as a quarry, a medieval apartment complex, a fortress, and probably a superstition magnet. Rome builds things like it knows the planet will run out of patience before the buildings run out of structural integrity. Bathhouses, ancient Rome's unnecessarily fancy public spas. Now, let's slow down even more and drift into something warm and steamy. No, not romance, ancient plumbing. Rome had public bathhouses so big and luxurious they make modern gyms look like sad water closets. Take the Baths of Caracalla, a complex so huge that if you dropped a modern-day mall inside, you'd probably lose it somewhere between the sauna and the cold plunge. Inside these bathhouses, you'd find heated pools, cold pools, gym rooms, massage areas, libraries, gardens, decorative mosaics, and more hot air than the Roman Senate. And all of this was powered by fire, literal fire, stoked by slaves and workers underneath the floors in vast furnace rooms, feeding heat into the hypocaust. Imagine being a Roman senator. You spend your morning arguing about taxes, your afternoon soaking in a marble pool, and your evening walking on heated floors like you're the emperor of a luxury resort. Of course, Caracalla built his bath complex mostly to distract the public from the fact that he was a disastrously bad leader who solved problems using stab first, think later logic. But hey, the building still stands, so who was the real winner? Let's drift toward the quiet world of Roman tunnels. Now we move underground, slowly, quietly, almost like a ghost passing through limestone. Roman tunnels were ambitious, and by ambitious, I mean someone in a toga pointed at a mountain and said, "Yes, we will go through that." The Claudius Tunnel, for example, drained an entire lake, Lake Fucinae, in a construction project so massive that even modern engineers look at it and take a deep breath. The Romans dug a 3-mile tunnel through solid rock using picks, hammers, and questionable optimism. No electricity, no drills, just manpower and stubbornness. The project took 11 years and around 30,000 workers. The lake did drain eventually, sort of. The tunnel worked, but not as well as they hoped, because even Roman engineering couldn't outsmart water completely. But the fact that they tried and got pretty close, that's peak Roman energy. Harbors, Rome's attempt to impress Neptune. Now let's glide out toward the sea for a moment, specifically to Portus, Emperor Claudius's big watery passion project. Romans wanted a major harbor on the coast near Rome, so naturally they decided to build one from scratch, not near a sheltered cove, not near natural protection, just straight into the open sea. Their solution? Build a giant crescent-shaped breakwater, sink a U entire ship filled with cement to form a foundation, and construct a massive lighthouse on top. Hope the waves would cooperate. Spoiler, the waves did not cooperate. Storms repeatedly damaged the harbor, which forced Emperor Trajan to redesign and rebuild it later with a perfect hexagonal layout that actually made sense. But the engineering is still incredible. Think of it like this. Rome didn't wait for a perfect coastline. Rome made one, which says a lot about the empire. Part genius, part stubborn, always building something slightly bigger than necessary. Rome's insanely organized army engineers. Now, let's float over to the military. Not the fighting. We're not doing anything dramatic tonight. Just the quiet, methodical, slightly obsessive group known as the Roman military engineers. These guys were the empire's secret weapon. While legions marched, engineers marched with them, carrying tools and surveying equipment. Every night, literally every night, Roman soldiers built a fully fortified camp, complete with ditches, ramparts, defensive walls, towers, gates, internal roads, and a grid layout that would make a city planner